The US housing market is unlike any other market there really is. You're selling properties that are absolutely unique, and you have individual buyers and individual sellers making decisions on what they think is the best way to navigate that market. But I think it's really important to understand more about those individual buyers and those individual sellers. So if you are thinking about buying or selling in the Pittsburgh area, stay tuned. I'm going to give you a breakdown of exactly where a lot of the buyers in the Pittsburgh area are coming from. And I'll also look at where the sellers are going to. We're going to look at some Redfin data to explore those migration patterns. I'm also going to share my own personal data, some of the information I've come across as a specialist with out-of-state buyers. My name is Mark McClinchie, and I'm a real estate agent in the Pittsburgh area. I serve the entirety of Allegheny County in any community outside of the county that touches the border. Since 2019, I have been helping buyers and sellers across the region navigate the market, and a special emphasis on out-of-state buyers that are moving to the Pittsburgh area that have very little experience in the Pittsburgh area. So they need to understand the neighborhoods and the communities and the lifestyle and how the entire region operates. Hope you'll stay tuned to this video and learn more about the buyers and sellers in the Pittsburgh market. I do want to give a quick clarification that the data I'm presenting from Redfin is not actual buyers that have moved here, but it is search data. So take it with a grain of salt. They are looking on their platform, which has millions and millions of users, and they're looking at where people are searching from and what they're searching for. So that is the data that I'll be presenting is from Redfin, as well as my own data, which is a lot more accurate in terms of my experience. So according to Redfin, most of the buyers that are moving to Pittsburgh seems to be regional buyers, people maybe within a few hours drive coming from West Virginia, coming from Ohio, or coming from Washington, DC, definitely a big group there. Or they are coming from much further places away, longer moves from the West Coast or from Florida or from Texas. So when you look at the table that they've provided from Redfin, you can see that Washington, DC takes the top spot, New York City is in the second spot, and then you sort of move down the rest of the list with a lot of major metro areas, LA, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas. Obviously, Wheeling is a much smaller place, but only about an hour from the Pittsburgh area. So this is kind of an interesting look as to where the buyers, according to searches on Redfin, are looking in the Pittsburgh area. And I'll give you a sense of what I'm seeing from people that are calling me with actual buyers and making moves to the Pittsburgh area and where they're coming from. So the majority of my clients are coming from the West Coast or Colorado or Texas or Florida. And the reasons they're coming here might surprise you. They're not always chasing the lowest purchase price, although affordability is definitely a central factor, but they're chasing quality. They know they can get a better home, a higher quality home than where they're currently living. And they know they can get a lifestyle that they can't get where they're currently living. And they really are looking for long-term value. It's interesting that most of my clients do have the ability to choose many different areas to move to. And as they do their research, they're looking throughout the Midwest, they're looking in the Northeast, and everything just isn't a perfect fit when it comes to many, many things, whether it's schools, healthcare, employment opportunities, and certainly home values. So Pittsburgh is at the top of most of my clients' list when they start doing their research, and that's when they start reaching out to me. I hope you'll take a look at my library of videos here and talk about the neighborhoods and the communities. In fact, if you want more detail beyond these videos, go down to the description or the QR code on your screen. You can download a free relocation guide for the Pittsburgh area. I take a deep dive into what it's like to live in the Pittsburgh area, and I highlight specific communities that are most popular with all of my clients, give you all the details about what it's like living there, information about the schools, information about the real estate market. So check out that relocation guide, and it really help with your research. All right, so let's flip the coin, and rather than focus on buyers, let's focus on the other party in the transaction, the sellers. You know, where are the sellers going when they're moving their house? And again, I'll share some Redfin data that is search data for people that live in the Pittsburgh area and what are the places they're searching for to possibly leave. In addition to sharing the Redfin data, I will share my own data, anecdotal information about what I'm seeing from sellers and what are the most common moves that they're making once they sell in the Pittsburgh area. If we look at the table that Redfin has provided, you've got Charleston, West Virginia, Youngstown, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Erie, Pennsylvania, Cumberland, Maryland, all regional moves basically within a 2-hour drive of the Pittsburgh area. And then you've got moves down to warmer climates in South Carolina and Florida. You've got Sarasota, Florida, Orlando, Florida, Cape Coral, Florida, and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So this data is coming from people that currently live in the Pittsburgh area, and Redfin is tracking their searches of where they're looking to move to. And now I will talk about my own experience with actual sellers and where they are moving to from my experience. As I work with buyers and sellers throughout the Pittsburgh region, it really is fascinating to hear about the stories of what sellers are doing next. You know, the obvious for some is that they're upsizing. Maybe they're selling their quote unquote starter home and they're moving to a bigger home because they have a bigger family, they have more needs. But you also have people that are downsizing. You know, there's a lot of empty nesters out there that no longer need that big house, and their moves might be local. But of course, there is another group of people that are leaving the Pittsburgh area, and they might be leaving for lots of different reasons. They might have jobs that are taking them to the West Coast. But there are a lot of people that want to move south. You know, it's kind of interesting. You know, the net migration is probably, you know, comes out to zero. I get so many clients coming from Florida, but I also know of tons of sellers that want to move to Florida. However, you know, why are people coming to Pittsburgh? I'm increasingly getting people are coming here for the weather. You know, that people want to escape the high humidity of Texas. So people like the 4 seasons. So for some people, so again, just note of caution, you know, to each their own. You know, people are going to choose where they want to live based on their needs, their circumstances, their preferences. And so I am seeing a lot of sellers that are moving out of state. I do think Pittsburgh is a popular place for incoming, but I would say, you know, net, the data is probably going to support, you know, that we don't have everybody staying here and everybody's just coming in. You know, our population is kind of steady. We're seeing small increases, particularly in the city of Pittsburgh. But overall, for every person that's moving to the Pittsburgh area, there's probably people that are moving away from the Pittsburgh area. So I hope that better understands what sellers are doing in the Pittsburgh market. And from earlier in the video, I hope you have a little bit of a window on what buyers are doing in the Pittsburgh market and specifically where they are coming from. So what does all this mean in terms of the real estate market in the Pittsburgh area, particularly if you're somebody that currently is living out of state and you're thinking about moving to the Pittsburgh area? You know, what is this video really about? What can you have as a takeaway? I'm going to start with the current market that we're in. We're in the spring of 2026. It's really feast or famine out there for those homes that are move-in ready, priced appropriately in a fairly high demand or even medium demand area. Those homes right now are flying off the shelf. There is mad demand for those properties. I have lots of buyers right now, and it is real struggle out there because everybody is attracted to the move-in ready homes. Why is that? Because they don't need any more money. Generally, most buyers do not have either the practical financial ability or just the mental, you know, capacity, the appetite to say, hey, I want to buy a fixer-upper and I can get a low price and I can get lots of great leverage, and then I can put my savings into fixing it up, making it exactly like I own. I don't think that's actually a bad idea, but not too many buyers are operating that way. And so the move-in ready homes are in super high demand, lots of bidding wars. They're getting well over asking. So on the other end, if homes are not move-in ready, yeah, they're sitting. You know, again, it's two different markets. I described it in a previous video as the K-shaped market, where certain inventory of homes, the move-in ready homes, are increasing with high prices and high demand. And they're also low inventory. So, right, low supply, high demand, you're going to get really high prices. And then the majority of homes are actually not move-in ready. They do require a lot of work. They have issues with old systems, you know, old HVAC systems, old hot water tanks, and old roofs. Kitchen's been there for 30 years or longer, and just generally needs a lot of upkeep and a lot of work, maybe a lot of deferred maintenance. Those homes are not moving. Nobody wants those homes, despite price drops. So this is a really frustrating thing for sellers, is thinking like, oh, they've heard maybe the market is really great, it's the spring market, and they're going out and listing, and they're realizing that people don't want their home because all the attention right now is on the move-in ready homes. So if you're a buyer from out of state, what that means is just be prepared and be mentally prepared and do your homework. Fortunately, you're probably coming from a market where the prices are even higher. So you have an advantage there where you can think about, all right, if your budget is 200 or your budget is 600, you know, maybe you need to think about looking below that price price number to build in potential bidding wars for move-in ready homes. So that's what I would do if I were a buyer. Also know that if you do have a little bit of extra savings and an appetite for making renovations, I know that can be expensive, but you can get a great deal. You can do full inspections, you can negotiate with sellers. Sellers are desperate right now to get rid of these homes. So you can get some great deals. Too many people are passing up on those, in my opinion. And then of course, if you're a seller, do a pre-listing inspection. Don't get surprised. Even if you have a move-in ready home, you know, somebody does inspections on it and then they realize that there's a bunch of issues with it. Now you're in this really difficult and maybe antagonistic negotiation during the inspection process. But if you do a pre-listing inspection, you'll know in advance. You'll be able to tell buyers, hey, this is the good, the bad, the ugly about my house. And I want you to know that's in advance, and we can negotiate a deal that we don't have to worry about. I mean, sometimes maybe buyers with that information will ideally waive inspections. It's a really good option to do a pre-listing inspection. Won't cost you that much money. So I do want to share a personal story about clients that I am currently working with. They're from California. They moved here a couple months ago. In fact, they moved into a hotel and their goal was to just find a house as quickly as possible. And it has proven to be far more difficult than they thought. Yes, they sort of have California prices in mind. So they knew that they could get a lot more for their money here, but I don't think they were prepared for the intensity of the bidding wars, because in the last couple weeks, we've made 5 or 6 offers on homes. Every one of those has had bidding wars and we have not ended up on top. You know, sometimes we are losing to buyers that are completely waiving inspections without a pre-listing inspection, by the way. So that's tough. There's no way you're gonna compete with that. If somebody wants to be reckless and irresponsible and not do an inspection, you'll never hear me recommend somebody not do an inspection. But yeah, they're looking in some of the most high demand areas. We've been kind of focusing on the North Allegheny area in the North Hills. We've been focusing on the Mount Lebanon area in the South Hills. And those are just super competitive markets. You know, their price range is anywhere from 5 up to 8. In fact, today we'll be submitting an offer and I hope it goes well. But if not, you know, we'll keep plugging away. The inventory is there and then the demand's there too. You just got to try to navigate that. Sometimes speed is really important. I'll go into much greater detail for your specific situation. So if you are thinking about moving to the Pittsburgh area, please give me a call. We'll set up a consultation. We'll talk about what your needs are, what your preferences are. I'm not going to push you into any neighborhood that isn't the right fit for you. So yes, please give me a call or text or send me an email, and would love to work with you and help with your research moving to the Pittsburgh area. Thanks for watching and welcome to Pittsburgh.